Democrat Senator Joe Manchin holds the line against his party. Major League Baseball executives say they were blindsided by the decision to move the All-Star game from Georgia, and the CDC gives coronavirus yet another downgrade. Hello, I'm Mike Huckabee with this week's Breakdown. It's good to see that West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin is finally putting a little starch in his suits. Manchin is under intense pressure from his party and the media just to go along with all the radical, transformative, budget-busting bills the Democrats can ram down our throats with just 50 votes plus Kamala Harris. But he's also from a state that Trump won by nearly 39 points. So he knows what his own constituents would think about that. And this is why Manchin's every statement about which way he's bending and leaning on one bill or another makes headline news. And any signs of wavering can be very frustrating to those who see him as the only thing standing between the radical left's destructive agenda and our nation and Constitution. On one issue, at least, Manchin has decided to make it clear that he will not waver, and that's the left's dream of doing away with the Senate filibuster so they can pass every last one of their awful ideas without one single Republican vote of support whatsoever. Manchin wrote an op-ed for the Washington Post to declare that, and I quote, "There is no circumstance in which I will vote to eliminate or weaken the filibuster," end quote. He said, "We can't solve America's problems with only partisan solutions and reconciliation bills that shortcut the legislative process, and that the time has come to end these political games and usher a new era of bipartisanship where we find common ground on the major policy debates facing our nation." Joe Manchin called the filibuster a critical tool to protecting that input and our democratic form of government. Let's just all hope and pray that he really means it and that he's got the fortitude to stand up to the vitriol that certainly will be coming his way. And speaking of radical, transformative one-party legislation, House Democrats have scheduled a vote on a D.C. statehood bill for the week of April 21st. They passed the same bill in the last session, but it was stopped by the GOP Senate. Only the preservation of the filibuster could keep it from passing the Senate now on a 50-50 tie vote. There's also the minor sticking point that making D.C. a state is specifically prohibited by the U.S. Constitution. But when have today's Democrats ever let that little detail stand in their way? So here's a question for you. Do you think Joe Manchin will hold the line against his party? And as crazy as Democrats have gone in the last few months, do you think this will affect them in 2022? I'd love to see your responses to that in the comments below, and I hope you'll share them. On top of tearing apart the principles that made America great, the radical transformative left may also have caused the collapse of America's favorite pastime. I suppose apple pie is going to be next on their hit list. But before I get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I hope you'll consider doing that. And if you are subscribed, click the notification bell below and select all notifications. Fox's Charles Gasparino reported that Major League Baseball executives were completely blindsided by Commissioner Rob Manfred's decision to cave to the woke mob and move the All-Star game out of Atlanta. He claims they also fear a major fan backlash because of the loss of 100 million tourist dollars that'll harm black residents of Atlanta area, as well as the businesses of the area after they move the game to the much whiter city of Denver. And I'm not talking about the snow out there either. They're reportedly trying to come up with some solution to help mitigate the damage that they've caused. Of course, they could just admit they were misled by the president's lies about the law being a return to Jim Crow instead of very standard election laws similar to those in many other states. And they could keep the game in Atlanta, but that would require guts. So forget about it. Another interesting twist. Gasparino claims Manfred's decision to move the game came after he spoke to Democrat anti-vote law crusader Stacey Abrams. Abrams wants to run for governor again, and she doesn't need voters blaming her for the game being moved. If Miss Abrams has flip-flopped on her stance, I wouldn't be surprising. After all, she's built a power base for herself by proclaiming that vote fraud is non-existent, all the while continuing to insist that she was really the winner of the last Georgia gubernatorial election, but somehow she got cheated. I guess it's only insurrection to question an election if you're a Republican. Finally, for the past year, operating on the advice of the unquestionable scientific experts at the CDC, most of us have been constantly swabbing our hands and every surface of our homes and workplaces with industrial strength sanitizer, all to kill the COVID-19 virus. The CDC just issued new guidelines based on the latest data, and they now say that the risk of contracting the virus by touching an infected surface and then touching your mouth, nose, or eyes is actually low. How low? The risk, about 1 in 10,000. They describe it as possible, but not a significant risk. They say people generally catch COVID-19 through direct contact with a sick person or droplet or airborne transmission. Remember, supermarket customers running whenever it was announced that a few bottles of hand sanitizer or Lysol had arrived? Well, here's the new guidance on what it takes to clean contaminated surfaces. Cleaning with soap or detergent should be enough to further reduce the relatively low transmission risk from fomites. A fomite, by the way, is an object or material likely to carry infection. The CDC continues, I quote here, "There's little scientific support for routine use of disinfectants in community settings," end quote. Cleaning with normal soap or detergent is considered effective. And that's the unquestionable expert scientific advice for this week. So remember this whenever someone tells you about something that the science is settled. Now let's see how long YouTube lets this video stay up. Thanks for watching. I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel below, as well as clicking the notification bell. And if you want more of my news analysis and commentary, be sure to sign up for my newsletter at MikeHuckabee.com. It is completely free. Also, check out our second channel, Huckabee's Jukebox, for some great entertainment, and then check back here tomorrow for more videos. That's it for this edition of The Breakdown. I'm Mike Huckabee.